All right. I'm so happy to be here with my very, very close friend, Dr. Woodrow Beck. We were just talking about, we go back since 2000, about going on to 13 years now.
13 years.
Good time.
Hard to believe.
You know, Dr. Beck has been a big part of quantum neurology since the very beginning, even before it was quantum neurology, back the early days. He was at the second event I've ever taught at, and that's awesome. So thank you so much, Woody.
Hey, I'm glad I was able to keep up with you, George.
Now it's funny because you were with me from early on.
Right.
And, we were developing quantum neurology throughout our relationship and learning the possibilities of it. And I remember when you first started, you didn't incorporate the work. You just simply put at the time it was a laser, but you just simply put that on the top of the head and you were seeing changes alone with that.
Exactly. Back in those days, I was a very busy doctor. I did quantity as opposed to quality. And when I first went to George's first seminar, I was trying to figure out how to incorporate what he was teaching into my practice. And to me, at that time, it was a challenge. But
and you were seeing...
I was seeing over 100 patients a day,
right?
3 days a week, and I was seeing about 60 on the half days. And so I loved the work George was doing and the way he presented it, but I didn't know how to incorporate it into my practice. So I had to do it slowly. And like George said, I actually bought 6 lasers because I had 6 treatment rooms at that time. And I'd put the patient in a room and I'd put the laser on, I call it CV20, the point right at the top of the head. And I was seeing changes. And to me, they were remarkable changes because they weren't, I wasn't touching the patient, and I was seeing just changes that was, so I was very impressed. And so then I kept going to George's seminars, and I'd hear these other doctors talking about what I call the real miracles happening, and I felt like I was being left out because I wasn't using what I was taught. And so I was very slow to incorporate what I was learning. But there was a good flip side to that. I kept hearing it, and it got ingrained into me that it worked. And without a doubt, I knew it was working. And so I kept incorporating it at a very slow pace, but I was still happy. And I didn't have to drastically change my office. And so, I shouldn't say this, but every time I'd see George, I'd say, "George, you're costing me money."
You would say that.
Hey, I know it's to you.
And you all, people may not know this about you, is that you're a champion tennis player.
Yes, I'm right now I'm ranked 8th in the state in the 65-year-olds. I've been ranked from early on, but right now I'm over 65 and I'm ranked 8th in the state.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Now, another thing, when we first started working together, you're like, well, I'm going to have this done for me and my family, but I don't know if I want my competitors getting any of this good stuff.
Well, that is so true, but what I find is in my town, there's about 6 other doctors, and all but one of them come to my office to get treated. And I treat them using the stuff, and they all say, "Wow," and they're excited and they're happy to get the treatment, but none of them want to change.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't change. So my fear of, maybe my competitor getting it that doesn't really work because they don't really get the big picture. And I honestly don't know how to convince people, because if they see it and they feel it and they touch it and it works, why else wouldn't you buy it?
Right.
I mean, I go back to when I first met George in Raleigh. I was having a heel problem because I am a tennis player and it was stopping me. And I'd been to a podiatrist and he gave me a cortisone shot so I could keep competing like a nut.
And you know, just sorry to interrupt you,
No.
but when we first met, you walked in late to my event, and you know, only as Woody could do, he walks in late to the event. Sorry, I'm late, everybody. I'm here now, so you get started.
That's exactly right. And then George, he was asking for a volunteer that had a problem, and there I go. So I went up there, and George did his what I call laser magic at the time.
But just an add to the story is you were telling the class at the time that you were going to quit tennis because of this injury you were dealing with.
Sure, because the podiatrist had told me I had a bone spur, and I'd go in and get a cortisone shot, and it would last for about 7 weeks. And then after that 7th week, you know, you get out of bed, that first step feels like the needle going up your heel,
Wow.
and then you know, you walk around for a while, and then it takes about an hour for it to go out. But the thing I learned from that is that podiatrist, he took a picture of just the one foot, and he told me that, oh, that's the bone spur there. And later on, I went and took a picture of the other heel, and it's got the same damn spur. And that one's never hurt. And come to find out, that's where the calcaneum, that's where the hamstring hooks. So that spur is normal in everybody. So, in my opinion, most people that are diagnosed with a heel spur, it truly isn't a heel spur.
Correct.
That's my
Correct.
opinion.
I agree with you.
And then if you do some muscle work on the soleus, usually that bone spur goes away.
That's
But
right. Now that day that I saw you,
yes.
would you mind telling how quickly we
Oh
handled
yeah,
that issue?
we're sitting there and George does this to my, basically it was my heel, and he worked with me on the laser, and I didn't know what he was doing.
And this was in front of the class. It was a demonstration.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of doctors in there, and I'd never seen it or heard of George. And then I remember him saying, "Stomp your heel." And I stomped my heel, and the pain was gone. And I thought, whoa, something he did was magical to me. And that's why I'm here today. It didn't take much to sell me. But I really do believe it's not so much that the pain was bothering me. I wanted what George had because it kept me playing tennis, what I love to do.
Right.
And even though I love being a chiropractor, and now I love using that, I see that people are motivated by what they can't do as opposed to what they can do.
Right.
And so that's why, and it's so beautiful, and I'm out here today with what I call the brain thrust. I got 3 of the most brilliant doctors in the world that I can get some nuggets from them.
Yeah, our Quantum Neurology think tank.
Think tank. I'm talking about Dr. Jim and Dr. Ed and Dr. George. Hey, there's no
And
better.
Dr. Beck.
Yeah, well,
You know.
they drag me along.
Well, you know, the beauty of quantum neurology is of course the healing we experience ourselves. I'd say the very close next layer would be our own family members. Now, would you mind talking about? You don't have to tell all the details, of course, but we've worked with Mary, who had a real long-term back problem for a while.
Okay.
Would you mind talking about that?
Not at all. My wife Mary, by the way, we've been married 42 years. And
Congratulations.
I was out skiing in Colorado, and my wife was in a hospital in North Carolina, and quote, my friend, a radiologist, called me and he says, Dr. Beck, your wife's laying in the hospital paralyzed and she needs immediate surgery. And she's paralyzed. And I says, you don't touch her till I get back to North Carolina. And so, make a long story short, she had taught aerobics for like 20 years and she blew out a disc. Totally blew out a disc. And she couldn't walk and she was paralyzed.
Was it both legs? One
No,
leg?
it's just one leg, left leg.
Mhm.
And so anyhow, I got back to town and we took her to several orthopedists and neurologists, and we finally went to one in Cary, and he said, Dr. Beck, he says, you're a chiropractor, you need to work on your wife, and he says, we can do surgery at any time. He says, surgery's not in a hurry. He says, if you can't get your wife's pain and symptoms under control, we can do it at any time. So that sounded good to me because I was going to attempt to help her. And it really, this was before I knew George now.
Mhm.
And I worked on her, and it took approximately a year. And I probably worked on her almost every day, at least once a day. And we got her up so she could get up and she could walk, and she's reasonably out of pain. And that in itself was rewarding because it's very frustrating
Oh yeah.
being a chiropractor and having a chiropractic problem that you can't fix,
Oh yeah.
especially with your loved ones.
Especially with
It crushes you because you feel like I'm helping all these other people and I'm not being able to do what I want to do for the ones you love the most.
Absolutely.
And long story short, we kept working with her, but her foot still was numb. And when she fatigues at all, or gets under stress mostly, sometimes by me, but her foot just goes totally numb and it always turns in. It toes in. And it's almost like a extreme pigeon toe, and if she's walking, she almost falls because she just loses the power in that leg. And just the stress, emotional or physical, puts pressure on that disc, and it kind of weakens her. And we kept working with it, and I did nutrition and supports, and I did everything I knew to do at the time. And then I started doing the neurological work on her.
How long would you say between she first got injured with that disc and you started learning what we now call quantum neurology?
Probably there was actually about a 7 to 8 year
Right.
gap in there before I started using the neurological rehabilitation stuff that I was learning.
Right.
And then she started responding even faster, and because I didn't even know what myotone was, and then I knew dermatones, but myotones are kind of like specific little things that dermatones are kind of like basic things, and so she started responding even more favorably. And then the real pretty kind of the crux of this comes when I was very fortunate to work with George, and when he was doing his research for the FDA with his
The
GRT light.
That was probably in 2004, 2005.
Right, because Dr. George came to my office and we did research on, what was it?
Light therapy and
Light therapy on how many people?
a few hundred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several hundred people so we could help Dr. Gonzalez with his FDA approval. We were proving that his light
Does what
decreased pain and increased range of motion.
That's right.
And that's what we wanted to prove, and that's what we did prove. And so Dr. Gonzalez got FDA approval for his GRT light.
Thanks to Woody and Dr. Chauvin and Dr. Tori Hinson and all the patients that helped with that. That's been
and I was
wonderful.
very helpful. But the beautiful part about that at that time, Dr. Gonzalez and his wife Lori came and stayed with us. And at that time, George was kind enough to do things that I didn't know how to do. And he worked with my wife several times. I know she mentioned the other day, she says, "You don't spend an hour with me like George did." And so, you know, your family gets a little, you know, they usually get the commercial treatment. But anyhow, George was able to bring feeling back in her leg through the use of quantum neurology that had been, quote, dead for over 10 years.
Wow.
So that, and to this day, my wife's able to, she runs, she plays tennis 3 or 4 times a week, and she gets along great. So I'm
Wonderful.
very happy, not only for myself, but for my wife, and that's another reason that quantum neurology should be shared with everybody.
Absolutely. Now, most people don't know that when somebody has a neurological issue like your wife had, whatever the neurological issue is, doesn't matter, it's said that that patient has 6 months to recover any function, because after 6 months they expect 0 recovery. So they say maximum recovery from nerve damage is 6 months. So they will often tell people after 6 month time, just deal with what you have and learn to live with it, because they don't expect to get anything back. So 10 years is obviously much more than 6 months, and to recover that after so many years is wonderful. Now you've had, I think, the record case of time from injury. You know, you had a patient who injured their shoulder when they were in their teens or their 20s, and you worked on them when they were, I think, 80 or 90 years old.
Yeah, he was actually 80. He hurt himself, he told me, Nick, you get a little senile, you forget these things.
Well, you've had 100 patients a day for what, 30, 40 years.
But Nick, this is a treat.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law called me and she says, we're coming up to visit and I've got a friend that's got a problem. Would you be glad to see him? And I said, sure, bring him on up. And she neglected to tell me that Nick was in a wheelchair, and Nick hadn't walked in a year, and Nick had heart bypass, he had high blood pressure, he had all these other gizmos going on. Anyhow, when he shows up to my office, he comes wheeling in, and I thought, oh my God. And, you know, and he's from Florida, and anyhow, long story short, I treated him, and the first day I treated him, my sister-in-law was there, my brother-in-law was there, his wife was there, my wife was there, and I said, Nick, let's stand up and walk. And he stood up and walked. And I don't know who was the most surprised, but he stood up and walked. But that was just a miracle, true miracle.
Absolutely.
And Nick had told me in the history that he had injured himself. I think he injured himself in high school or maybe college. Anyhow, he hadn't raised his arm above 90 degrees in 50 years.
Wow.
50 years. And after that first treatment, Nick was able to take his arm up there. I mean, you know, not only was this a beautiful miracle, but it gives the doctor confidence that he can conquer anything through God. And through God only uses us as vehicles share this. So I don't take credit as myself doing anything, but it's just it just gives you the confidence to be able to help anybody. So that was a great story about Nick. And then my son-in-law, who is also taken some of George's work, he's been to two seminars, and so he was helping me, and it really helped because he was like testing the myotones, and I was lasering, and we were doing stacking and doing all the advanced stuff together, and it really, I'm not as blessed as Ed to have a helper coming in and helping me. I do it all myself, but that was a beautiful experience.
Now, that was amazing. That was amazing. Now, Damon, your son-in-law, and you're blessed. You have your daughter's a chiropractor.
Yes.
Your son-in-law's a chiropractor.
Yes.
And now your son's a chiropractor.
Yes.
And he just recently married a chiropractor as well.
Yes. Yes.
And your son and daughter-in-law just graduated from chiropractic school, and they're now working in one of your clinics.
Right.
And your other son-in-law and daughter are working in the other clinic.
Right.
So it's a beautiful legacy that you've created in healing.
As we speak, yesterday was the first day that I let my son and his wife run my office.
Congratulations. It's a beautiful legacy to hand down, and something that I want to reiterate to people and to doctors especially is every penny we make is through helping somebody in some way get well, help them achieve something that they want to achieve. And that's very special. It's very special in our life because it's a very positive way of living your life as opposed to, some company that makes chemicals and that's damaging people and things like that, for an example. So it's a very positive way to live and a positive way to help other people. Now, your son Damon, I remember you called me up once, and it was an emergency situation. Would you mind talking about that?
Another great story that baffles me. My son-in-law, he woke up one morning. He's never had a problem prior to this, and he couldn't raise either arm. I mean, he couldn't raise either arm. And
did he have sensation, or was it?
He had no strength in either arm.
Wow.
He just couldn't. And they just had a baby. He couldn't lift the baby.
Oof.
He could barely drive to work, and it's only like less than 2 miles from his house to my office. So he couldn't adjust people. He couldn't raise. Had no grip strength in either hand.
Yep.
Couldn't raise either arm. So I called George, George was able to share with me how to start the healing process, and we attacked it from a nutritional standpoint, and we attacked it from a neurological standpoint, and I mean, it was like, there again, we got magic because of knowing where to start and what to do to allow the body to heal itself.
Right.
And I would have never known any of this had I not done any of George's work. It's just miraculous. And basically, it was all the C8 myotone, it was all the heart,
Right.
and then as we got into the specific valves of the heart, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. And when you start testing it, and it's weak, and it's weak, and I'm thinking, wow. It's kind of like, when I say George's work, quantum neurology is George's brain thrust, but the other doctors adding to it. And it's just a beautiful feeling if you kind of get stumped at any level that you have the access to other people that do know the answer.
Right.
Now that's just a powerful thing.
It
It's
really
not
is.
so much that you have to know everything, because I don't. But
And neither do I.
it's just a wonderful feeling to know that I know somebody that does, or he knows somebody that can get me in the right place so that I can help that person. And,
Absolutely.
and long story short, he did the nutrition, we did the neurological stuff, he's back 100% normal. And I honestly believe, had I not known this, he'd have been in the hospital.
Yep.
They'd have done an MRI, they'd have a CAT scan, they'd probably done a PET scan, they'd have probably done a stress test, because they would have related all this to his heart. And
Steroids, anti-inflammatories.
only, I can't even tell you what would have happened.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, a trajectory of that kind of presentation, you know, we never got the formal diagnosis from a traditional neurologist, but those kind of presentations, the labels that they would have placed on that kind of a disease or condition would be MS, multiple sclerosis, or ALS, you know, all these kind of neurological wasting diseases that would describe what was happening, but you know, at the end of the day, we're just, in quantum neurology, we're looking at, okay, these specific nerves are weak. Doesn't matter why they're weak, if it was a virus or an infection or an injury or a condition that caused that nerve to be weak. We simply have a patented system of strengthening this neurological terrain that we deal with. And our experience has been consistently that when you strengthen the nervous system in the areas where it's weak, the body has the opportunity to heal itself.
Amen.
Amen.
And using the George's katas give you a direct way to do this. And you can consistently do over and over and prove what you're doing. That's
Right.
the beauty of it to me. Because you can test it, and if it's not weak, you fix it. If it's fixed, then you can go to the next level.
Right, and you can add stress on top of something. So first layer is something's not working.
That's right.
And then we have a way of strengthening that. And then once something's strengthened, then you want it to be stronger. It's you know, if you're, I think of the rheostat of the light switch, you know, the knob on the light switch where, you know, you can have the light on, but it's dim. And what we want to do in quantum neurology is we want to turn the volume up, or that rheostat up, to have full expression of the nervous system at all times. So that's...
I like to think of it as upregulation.
Right.
It's kind of like either having a Volkswagen or a Porsche. You know, if you can drive around in a Porsche, you'd rather than a Volkswagen, and you're going to get a lot more horsepower out of the Porsche. So if you can keep upregulating it till it works at its full potential.
Right.
That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. Now you had a very special case. I believe his name was Justin.
Yeah, still treating Justin.
Yeah. Would you mind talking about him?
Yeah, Justin is, man, Justin, he brings tears to the eyes. Justin's a 23-year-old Army Special Forces. He was in Afghanistan and took a bullet. Bullet went in his occiput and came out of his frontal bone.
He's a hero.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's amazing he's alive.
It is totally amazing he's alive.
Whew.
Anyhow, it's every time I think about him, I think of, wow, that could be my son or your son,
Oh, yeah.
or anybody over there that's there to protect us. Anyhow, Justin's mother heard about me. I don't know how she heard about me. She didn't ever tell you. She just said, I heard about you doing things that normal doctors didn't do. And Justin was, of course he was down and he was paralyzed, and he went through every Army hospital they've got. They still doing therapy on him every day. They doing speech therapy, vocational rehabilitation, all kinds of rehab on his leg and his arm. Anyhow, when Justin came into my office, this is a year after the fact, okay? He had a severe, severe limp. He had electronic braces so that he could carry his feet, and he could not raise his arm, and his hand was gripped like that. And
Was he affected mostly on one side of his body, or did he have both sides?
he was affected mostly all on the right side, right arm, right hand, right leg, and his speech was limited. I mean, I could understand him well, but you could tell his speech was slow or slurred just a little. That was the main things that you would notice right off the bat with Justin. And anyhow, the first day I treated him, I found myotones in his right leg were all weak, and we upregulated them, and he was able to walk better. But to me, it's always amazing because I love arms and shoulders. I'm just an arm and shoulder man. He had not been able to raise his arm again. And after we worked on his arm, he was able to raise his arm. And you know, his mom's sitting over there, and she's in tears of joy. And me too. And we're just sitting there. And she just can't believe that this is happening a year after the fact, that no one else has ever done any of the stuff that I was in there doing to him. And she was so impressed that she wanted the Wounded Warriors, the guy, they helped pay for some of the care. So she said, is it okay if I bring the head guy from the Wounded Warriors in? I said, sure. And anyhow, the next time he came in, this guy came in, he's sitting over there. Same thing. Of course, his leg, just his leg, it went weak again, and I tested him, and I showed him, and we strengthened him, and then he's able to move, and the guy's over there kind of like, whoa, you know. And I looked at him, and I said, what's wrong with your shoulder?
Right.
Because I could tell that his shoulders was out in the way he was holding his head. So I tested his arm, and it was, one side was very limited, and so I tested the muscle strength, and he was weak, and then anyhow, then I did not adjust him. All I did was I lasered him up and got him strong, and you know, and all of a sudden, the light goes on. He didn't understand what was going on.
That's right.
Which no one understands. I mean,
it's definitely something that has to be felt, because you could see somebody, and the idea of, okay, if I press against any muscle, it goes weak, and then we do what appears to just be touching or shining a light on somebody, and boom, that strength comes back. It's definitely, when you experience it yourself, it's like, oh wow. But seeing it sometimes, depending on which part of the technique you're observing, it's not obvious. It's not obvious.
And it's definitely, because most people think, well, you're pushing harder, or you're not pushing as hard, or you're this and that. And I says, hey, I could care less. I'm just here, I'm kind of like the instrument here. I'm testing, that's all. It's just stronger. You know, and I do it, I usually show them with one finger just to show them that I'm not trying to overpower them. And this guy was stronger than I was anyhow. But long story short, he went back and he approved
Sessions.
30 visits, and he wrote me a check from the Wounded Warriors, and I think that was the first time that they had approved our type of treatment, and which I was very happy about. And just to let the armed forces know that there is help for those, I say boys, the soldiers that are hindered or hurt
Absolutely.
with handicaps, that they don't have to continue with,
That's right.
possibly, and that we will be able to help. And that's just all powerful.
You know, I'm confident we'd be able to improve their condition.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. And the question is how much rehabilitation is possible.
That no one, God knows.
Right.
But without a doubt, I believe you can help everybody.
Me too.
To some degree.
So-
Because every one of us is not working at our optimum
That's
potential.
right. So what happened with Justin?
Right now Justin is in Texas getting a new brace. He's down there. I haven't seen him. He'll be back next week
Yeah.
in my office. They're getting him a new brace that, and this is interesting, the way they put him in this new brace for his right leg. He had to, they custom made it, and he had to stay down in Texas at this rehab place for a month
Wow.
for them to train him to use it.
Wow.
Where, my mind's clicking, I'm thinking, well, if I could laser that and strengthen the myotones,
Right.
I don't know if it would take a month, but maybe Obama would like to know this. I don't know.
Well, it's an interesting thing because we obviously have an extremely powerful rehabilitation system. And people will say to me, well, why isn't this blah, blah, blah? Whatever they may say. Why doesn't the government know about this? Why isn't this in the VAs? Or why isn't this at every doctor's office? And part of that I take responsibility for because I'm a doctor. I wasn't trained in, marketing or big business type of concepts. We've been developing the healing side of these concepts, and we haven't gone out there on the big marketing and the business side of healing profession. I've trained about, I'd say in the last 10, 12 years, I've trained about 600-700 doctors, maybe 700-800 around there, and we have about 60 plus certified quantum neurologists like Woody, and it's an amazing thing to have that network of doctors out there, that we're seeing these kind of cases everywhere. Woody's been around long enough that he's had a lot more of these types of cases to work with. But it's an interesting thing because people often say, well, why don't they teach this in school? And unfortunately, it's just the way the system works, because schools get student loans from the government. And they get student loans from the government for the curriculum that they're teaching currently. So they don't have to add anything to that curriculum to continue making their money. So they're not looking at improving their curriculum or advancing their curriculum. They're just looking at keeping it within the realm that the government will allow those student loan payments to keep coming in. So unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you look at it, that model limits the growth potential or the expansion potential of a profession. It doesn't matter if it's chiropractic or medicine or acupuncture, that model will limit the growth potential of a profession. Because they're not allowing for new exploration or new discoveries into that system. The other thing is government, and the bottom line, it comes down to time and energy. I personally focus my time on teaching doctors and getting these concepts out there. It would probably take at least one person full time to engage with the government and deal with all these, I don't want to say bureaucracies, but government agencies dealing with these different types of cases. And just as you mentioned, you were the first person that the Wounded Warriors had paid for this kind of service for their person. I'm curious why they're not paying for the rest of their people to have this kind of a service. You know, it's, and I'm not not saying anything bad against them at all. It's just, hey, well, if this is the benefit we're seeing with Justin's case, it would stand to reason that other people would benefit as well.
Well, that gets back to, you know, I hate to say it, but that gets back to the bureaucracy that's, there's, you gotta have a certain code for this, and you gotta,
That's right.
this has gotta be approved, and you gotta have this number, so that's way down the line. But I look at it a little different, George.
Yeah.
You know, I think most doctors of any kind, they don't want to change, especially if they feel like they're doing a good job. It's very difficult to change. And I also, in this line of work, to me, I feel like it's not only is it mental challenge, but it's a physical challenge, because you have to interact and test that patient. I look at most doctors as not being, for lack of a better word, lazy.
I agree with you.
I don't believe that they want to put the effort in there. You got to put the effort in to get the result that you want.
Right.
And that's kind of the way I look at quantum neurology. I think you're going to always have the cream rises to the top, and I think that the doctors that want to do a continual better job seek that out.
Absolutely.
And when they are exposed to it, they're going to either find out more about it, or they're going to drop off the page. So
Right.
that's kind of the way I look at it.
You're so right, Woody, because I feel that, you know, when your goal as a practitioner or as a patient is to get well, you know, you have to deal with the terrain of the nervous system. I can't just look at Woody as a patient and go, oh yeah, your shoulder's bothering you, yeah, do this a few times and you're going to feel better. No, we have to physically get on this part of the body and test every single nerve that goes through this part of the body and evaluate it and physically evaluate it so that we say, okay, this is where the breakdown of communication in the nervous system is. And I develop a patented system of restoring that communication, whether it's a muscle strength issue, whether it's sensation that's lost, whether it's a cranial nerve issue, nerves going to your head. We can affect change in the organs of the body through the nerve supply as well, using all these concepts of the wiring of the nervous system. And it's a beautiful concept, and you know, I'm sure everybody's heard about my wife and her injury, and this work developed through the search of rehabilitating my wife from her spinal cord injury. So it's so much fun to be able to do this and share this work and have wonderful friends such as Woody that developed through the camaraderie and love of healing and helping others. It's truly a blessing in my life.
As we're getting ready to come to an end here, I wanted to share two other things.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite, Justin is just my heartthrob kind of, but Robbie, I got a young man, he came in the office when he was 15. He had a traumatic brain injury due to a car accident. He came in a wheelchair, and similar to Justin, except Robbie couldn't walk, and Robbie also couldn't talk. I couldn't understand a word he said, and he also couldn't use his right hand. Yeah, he's like this again. And
How was he injured?
car accident.
Okay.
Really a sad story, but he was on the way to school. Anyhow, Robbie was like in the top 3% of his class, really a brilliant. And his medical doctor is a real personal friend of mine, and he tells me that, in his opinion, Robbie would not have been able to recover at all had he not been a very intelligent person to begin with. But anyhow, Robbie couldn't walk, Robbie couldn't talk, and Robbie couldn't raise his hand. And long story short, Robbie still comes in. Robbie walks by himself. Robbie teaches other kids to read. He goes to the middle school and teaches kids to read before he comes to my office. And he can also raise his hand fully. And Robbie is now Robbie's 18. He was 15 when this happened. And
Wow.
it's just a blessing to be able to be involved to watch this boy, which they didn't think he would first live.
Yeah.
And they didn't think he would ever talk or walk by himself. And I just, thank God for the blessing that Robbie's been in my life. The other thing I'd like to say about quantum neurology that has, for me, is not just the quantum neurology work, but I have found that the doctors that participate in this all come with a common goal. And they come because they want to help people. And the beautiful part about this is that when they come, they share with the other doctors. And to me, it's just, it's the synergy of the group makes it even more powerful than as an individual. And I find that when I get around doctors that are positive and they all have a common goal, and it's just a beautiful experience going to a seminar. And it's a true blessing to me to come down here to be with this true, I call it the brain thrust. And because it's just, everybody loves each other. And we all are here to help and support and to help educate so that we can go back to our places and do a better job. And that's what I love about quantum neurology.
I love it too, and on that same thought, doctors, as we develop our practice, whether it's the location or, we develop different patient populations. So, somebody who lives in a retirement community will obviously work on elderly patients, and some people specialize with children, other people specialize with autistic or spectrum, children on the spectrum, autism spectrum disorder. And what has happened, and this wasn't the plan when I started teaching this work, I didn't know this was going to happen, but we started developing doctors with different specialties. So Dr. Elizabeth Sheehan has tremendous success with autism spectrum cases. Dr. Chauvin here in Louisiana has tremendous success with spinal cord and brain injury. He himself recovered from a severe aneurysm with quantum neurology. We have Dr. Chris Cormier, who's doing a lot of endocrine type work, helping people balance their hormones, and in some cases he's helped them remove the need for insulin. So strengthening their nervous system so that just naturally their insulin usage gets less and less, and then their body just starts doing what it's supposed to be doing by itself. And we have several other doctors. Dr. James Sheen, who everybody calls Einstein, because he's so brilliant.
Because he is.
Because he is. He's very brilliant. And so, we have this group of doctors, and it's continually growing. We get new doctors all the time that develop this skill. And, talking about this concept, Woody, because, again, it's a little difficult for people to understand. And we could talk about our patients and their successes. Would you mind talking about the concepts of quantum neurology and how that's changed how you look at your patients?
I'm not exactly sure what you're hunting there.
Well, it's we in school we learned the Rice technique for.
Oh, okay. Well,
and quantum neurology is different. It's completely different.
It's just that what you do when you become a quantum neurologist, or you even start up the scale to learning quantum neurology, you have a whole new appreciation for not only the whole healing process, because I was a good chiropractor before I ever learned quantum neurology, or I felt I was a very good, successful chiropractor.
Mm-hmm.
I helped a lot of people, and I did a good service to my community. But once I understood neurological problems better and was able to service those needs to my community better, you just get a whole new outlook on what you can realistically treat and care for. And so your whole world has expanded, where you might have been limited, depending on the doctor, to backs, necks, and knees or headaches. Now all of a sudden you're doing neurological stuff that's feeling and sensory and motor and whatever. So it just opens your world and gives you more confidence in what you're doing. And like George said, people can specialize in what they are attracted to, or what's attracted to them, and what they love. Like Dr. Sheehan, and doing with the autistic people is just magical stuff. To just listen to her, how much compassion she has in that area. So and not that I shouldn't, but I don't have that same passion there. But I might have a passion for a different area. So you can specialize because of your neurological understanding of how the body functions.
Right.
And going back to the simple katas that we learned, you grow to a certain level. And so it's just expanded my world. But I still like to think of myself, he's talking about specialists. I just love to work on shoulders, because I feel like I'm a shoulder guru. And I love carpal tunnel syndrome, because you know, I understand the nervous system there, and I know how to fix it. And so if there's a specialist for me, I feel that way. I can still work on the neurological system, but I love those because you make magic with it.
Yeah.
And you know, anything you do well, you like to keep doing. It's the things that you don't do as well in, you don't gravitate over there near as much as you do to the things that you do well. So
wonderful.
That's the way I feel about that.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share, Woody? Or?
No, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, I'm happy too. And you know, Woody, I love you, and I appreciate you, and thank you so much for being a part of my life.
Thank you, bud. Hey.
I love it.
Good. I didn't know I could talk that long.
Oh, come on. Don't stop talking.